Hello, Professor Feltwell. I'm Rachel Katzera, and this is my video project on comparative religion. My religions that I chose to highlight were Baha'ism, and I chose to compare that to Judaism and, by relation, Christianity. So, full disclosure, I had heard about the Baha'i faith about maybe a year ago on Oprah's Super Soul Sunday. There was an actor named Rainn Wilson who was on the TV show The Office, and he basically incorporated a talk about making art and that being a sort of like a prayer, and how in his faith that it's encouraged to be artistic and make art and to be proactive and combine action with the theology. So, honestly, the religion failed my litmus test, to be quite honest. I remember watching the show and then looking up the faith online, finding their .org website and doing some quick research and figuring out that for me personally, anytime I'm exploring something, I'm looking for what it is about that religion that could or could not work for me. So when I did the research on the website that long time ago, the litmus test that the religion failed was, were there any women in the upper ranks of this the organization? So when I did the research online, I figured out, no, there isn't. So you're off my list. And I moved on from there. I did read a lot of what the Baha'u'llah said and his successors said, and it was enlightening. I mean, it was definitely forward thinking, and he had some beautiful ways to explain and talk about what the world is today and the choices that we have. So with that information on my background with this religion, I kind of went into it already knowing a little bit and already having my own objections to how they decided to operate. So going in to this project, I chose not to just use the online resources, and really I used the .org website very little in research. I chose to pick up a book, and this one is The Beginner's Guide to the Baha'i Faith, and really just kind of understand more of the beliefs and practices before I really wrote it off as just another patriarchal theology. So the questions that I asked were similar to those that I would have been asking if I were genuinely considering converting or joining the Baha'i faith, because I really didn't want to have like a, how do you say, I didn't want to have my own thoughts impede my ability to really understand this religion. So I try to look at it with an open mind and not go back to that, oh well, it's just like Christianity, and and I'm not welcome or not encouraged to join because of a few other things other than just that I'm a woman. But it tends to be something that it's one of the first things I ask myself when I'm making friends, even, how do they feel about women? How do you really feel? And I will stop there and say that the Baha'i faith firmly believes in equality of the sexes and equality of all people. They definitely get that point across when you're reading. You understand they don't discriminate based on race. They feel like everyone should have an equal opportunity, and it's very much encouraged within the faith to not ever discriminate upon someone for something that is innately who they are. But that being said, in their organization, in the actual structure, there are no women serving on the assembly. And currently it's just open to men. So with that, I'll begin. The Baha'i faith is really fascinating. It begins in the late 1800s and mid to late 1800s, and one of the big things that stuck out to me that I compared Baha'ism to Christianity was that there was a prophet, so to speak. They don't call him a prophet. The Bab is, they actually call him the gate, and that meaning the beginning, the entrance to this. And he basically says, there's going to be another guy, and he's gonna have his own things to say about the world we live in, and he basically proclaims the coming of another individual who will begin the faith. So this is the Middle East, and this isn't even a time or a place in the world where one should be, basically saying, listen, I'm about to change the game here, and we need to get it together. And as a result, it doesn't end well for them, like it doesn't end well for some of the early Christians and Jesus, which is something that they had in common. They faced brutal retribution for the choice to come out and say, I'm feeling the voice of God and hearing the voice of God, and I've got to start something here. I've got to organize something here, something different, because what we have is essentially a very narrow perspective on God and his communication with man, and that's where we'll begin. So the Baha'i faith is begun by the Baha'u'llah basically saying that all the religions are right, that they all had a time and a place and a perspective, and that God has had a continuing conversation with man, and that there's been a line of people who are here to fulfill a destiny that is to communicate what God wants for his creation. So I like that. I really liked that when I read it. I thought, wow, that makes a lot of sense. Everybody's been right. And not only that, it makes it so that you don't begin by saying, oh no, they all got it wrong and I got the right idea here, I got the right answers. So instead of doing that, he really says, no, they were, all of the prophets and messiahs that come before me were right. They definitely had a perspective, and it worked for that group of people. So to go back to the questions that we should have been keeping in the back of our minds, I'll begin with how do the practitioners create order and meaning within their religion or belief system. And the Baha'is have a really kind of modern view on faith and religion and the role it plays in our lives. And that, again, it was refreshing to read that they really are considering that, you know, Christianity, Judaism, although God was communicating with those people, that it also kind of excludes a lot of people. You know, it's a lot of rules. There's a lot of, you gotta be a lot to, and sometimes with Christianity and Judaism, in fact, for example, one of the things that I remember from my background with Christianity, and I think I have a little bit more of a wider perspective on religion in the U.S. because of my background. And if you remember, I was Muslim until I was 7, and at the same time in my life, and then after my mother left the Islam faith, she was, there were my grandparents, and they were very devout Christians, Pentecostal, what my grandparents describe as Assembly of God. It was definitely a conservative Christian church, and so with those two opposing views, it was interesting for me growing up. I think I had a little bit more understanding of, wait a minute, even as a kid, wait a minute, there are a lot of different ideas and beliefs, and these people, I just can't say one's right or wrong, So the Baha'i faith begins by saying it's not about exclusion, that it is time for us, the human race, to be united with God's vision, and that this vision, this calling is open to everyone. Anyone who wants to partake in the Baha'i faith is welcome and encouraged to read and join in and really be a part of this coming of a new modern way of thinking about God and his interaction in our lives. And that really Christianity and Judaism and the Eastern religions are just a little too narrow. They just don't include enough people, and all of the aspects of those people, that they are women, that they are black, that they are white, that they're, they come from different cultures. And let's get down to the nitty gritty here. Like, what do we really need to be doing to, and interestingly, one of the things that I found that was really, it really struck me, because having a Christian background, I definitely, in the back of my mind, I'm like, yeah, we could just end it all in fire and damnation the way that it's spelled out in the Bible, and that the end will be ugly, and the end is going to happen. And Baha'u'llah says that. He says, even when they said that, even when Christianity and Christians have said this, and so many other religions have said, there's going to be an end, and it's going to be ugly. The end times are going to be ugly. Baha'u'llah says, yes, that's a choice we can make. We can do that, or we can come together and unify and work for peace and work for the life of the individual to be fulfilled and wonderful, and for him to work for that for his neighbor, no matter what his neighbor's life is like. That we just all deserve this, or we can go the hard way, whatever. But they so strongly believe this, that they would have faced persecution, death, torture, in what would have been, that was a really plausible place for that to happen in the Middle East, and it did for them. So, how do they practice? How do they find meaning? And so the Baha'i Faith is really big on science, technology, and the environment. They find that science and religion should go hand in hand, that it's really, science is proof of God's creation and all of the wonders within it. And that we should really, humans should really be instrumental in the caretaking of the environment and the advancement of civilization. And that includes the advancement of women. It is explicitly stated, advancement of women. They really, we are 50% here, and we got to help too, and that means we got to have the education and the access to those things that would help us fulfill our lives and fulfill our life's purpose. So, and another way that they create order is freedom from prejudice. So Baha'u'llah says, you don't get to, and he didn't mean you, he himself, that his is not the end all be all. That you can, read and take all this information in, but it's okay to disagree. It's okay to have your own opinion, and no one, and he was referring to the later church leaders who would follow him, that they don't get to say, this is the law, this is how it's written, and that's it. He wanted it set up so that there would be multiple opinions, and that the church and all of those opinions would be designed so that there are a varying of opinions, and that as long as the core beliefs, that we're not hurting or impinging on someone else's beliefs, not really so hurt, not really, yes, peace first, and let's lead with that. And so they do. They create order by having local and national assemblies. They that is their church hierarchy. That's how they keep everything systematic. They have a way of governing the church. Their Vatican, so to speak, is the Universal House of Justice, and that is made up by a assembly of people, and those people are elected and appointed, or appointed, and they have holy days. They really celebrate with that sort of fasting, reverence, prayer, holy day that we're familiar with other religions similar, such as Judaism and Christianity. So what are the central beliefs? Do they have a personal deity? What is the deity's name? So the central belief is unity. Unity of mankind, equality, justice, and that will lead us to the future that we hope for. The lesser of the two evils. Well, not lesser of two evils, but unity. Not ending this thing, ending this world in just mess and pain, and yeah, let's work together. So they believe in the one true God, and they believe that God is the same God who was talking to Muhammad, who was the father of Christ, and that all those people are definitely successive in the line of messengers, and that the Bab and Baha'u'llah and his son were, or grandson, were just successors, just one conversation continuing over time between man and God. So what are their rituals and practices and ethical views? Give some examples. So prayer, and like Rainn Wilson said, they like to expand upon prayer. Do you want to meditate? Do you like to create art? Do you want to be of service? And that be your prayer. So, of course, reading of scripture and meditation. And one of the things that was said in that regard by Baha'u'llah was, pride not yourselves on much reading of the verses, or on a multitude of pious acts by day and night, for were a man to read a single verse with joy and radiance, it would be better for him than to read with lassitude all of the holy books of God. Read ye the holy verses in such measure that ye be not overcome by languor and despondency. Lay not upon your souls that which will weary them and weigh them down, but rather what will lighten and uplift them. So I like that. This guy is great. I love his vision. So my questions, how was I looking at this when I was doing my research? And well, first and foremost, we've already covered this, are women to play a submissive role in this religion? And the answer is yes and no. Baha'is believe in equality. They say it. They don't agree with any prejudice at all. Whether it be religious, racial, patriotic, political in its origin, no prejudice. They say it is the destroyer of human foundations. So when they say it, they mean it. However, to quote the church, the membership of the Universal House of Justice is confined to men. And they just leave it at that. We're just not going to say anything else. And, all right, well, yeah, that's where you lose me. So, it is surprising that it's a provision that was ordained by Baha'u'llah himself. And he really kind of just says, we'll understand one day. I like to think that, I like to hope that this religion will maybe modernize that thought at this point. Who knows? Okay. So, yeah, they advocate for the advancement and education of women and girl children. All right. So, at least we get an education. All right. So, what answers can this religion provide that others cannot? And for me, we really do have a choice to make, right? Humanity. We can end this the hard way, like you know, like it says in the Bible, monsters and fire and or we can figure this out, because we are capable of being unified and peaceful. And the promise, the covenant, is that there will be world peace, either the hard way or the easy way. So, you know, I agree. And, you know, one of the things that I think keeps me researching, keeps me reading, is that he's got me. It is so interesting. This guy is in, you know, Iran, in the Middle East, and he's like, there's no Google, there's no internet, and he's just so brilliantly forward thinking and very good at communicating that vision. He is eloquent in the way he draws out those ideas. It really is beautiful, and I enjoyed reading his thoughts on God and the role he plays and the role we play. So to basically compare, just quickly draw some comparisons. One of the things that I found that were an interesting comparison between Baha'ism and Judaism was the succession of the lineage, right? So the Bab, and he's first, and he says there's another one coming. And then Baha'u'llah, and by extension Baha'u'llah's where is that here? Abdul Baha follows him, and then Shanghi Effendi follows him. So they're and that is wholly, like, that's considered sort of like, not sort of like, but like how in Judaism it was Abraham to Jacob, and Jacob's descendants, you know, then Moses. So there's a line of succession, and that was the first really interesting comparison I made. It's like, oh, well, that's interesting. And it follows the men. So the theme of exile, that happens. That happened. That happened in early Christianity. You know, they were tortured, exiled, murdered, and that sadly did happen to the early Baha'i church, heads of the church. So they differ in that there's no chosen people, right? So in the covenant, there's no chosen people. The covenant is man. That man will have to work for world peace. So there isn't like the, you know, God's chosen people like with Judaism. They have a broader worldview. The covenant goes from father to son. It's carefully recorded. That was another thing that I found, like, that's interesting. And you kind of have to accept the successors as divine. Yeah. So they have elected bodies. That was the commonality. Oh, and one God. Yeah, one true God. Both of, you know, Christianity, Judaism, and Baha'ism, one God. And the Baha'i faith underlines that it has been one God speaking that whole time. So all of them heard, you know, Muhammad Abraham, like they've all been communicating with the one God, and Baha'u'llah is communicating with the one true God. Baha'ism takes an opportunity to address religious fanaticism. They underline that. They say, we are not the mouthpiece of God. What I say, what I record, my actions are not, they're not divine. And this is what God's given me, but it is in no way the law. So it's humble, it's humble in that way. And I don't know why, but I didn't finish that thought when I brought it up earlier. One of the things I remember as an adult about being in a Christian church, the preacher held up the Bible and he said to the congregation, you either believe this is 100% truth or you believe it is 100% lie. And ouch. And so I like that the Baha'i faith begins by saying, we cannot even perceive with our tiny minds what God wants, or no, you cannot. And I like that, yeah, and the Baha'i faith believes that there could be more messengers to come. So, cool. I like that they're open to the openness. I like that. And it made sense. Whereas, with the others, with Christianity and Judaism, it's not necessarily they kind of are like, this is it. Okay. So, did I touch on everything? Yeah, they do not consider themselves know-it-alls. Refreshing. So I guess, yeah, I think I touched on everything that I wanted to say. And I'll end with another similarity, another thing that was, for me, it stuck out. So I mentioned that the reason Baha'ism did not pass my litmus test was because they do not include women within their assemblies. But there was another little mention that I found. It's very similar with the Abrahamic traditions, and that is no gays. I'm gay. I have known I was gay for a long, long time, and I think that was the one thing that I found to be the saddest exclusion. But honestly, it doesn't come across to me as blatant discrimination. I genuinely don't believe that Baha'u'llah knew any gay people. And I'm not an active part of that faith, so I can't say, whether or not the law of that has changed, although from my research, I can tell you it has not. I went on the website, went to the search bar, gay, enter, nothing. Lesbian, nothing. LGBT, nothing. There's nothing on the website to date that addresses any reference of inclusion of the gay community. If you use the .org resource to look up their faith, their beliefs, if you're interested, you're gonna find that it's gonna say something like within the scriptures, there's a few things we don't allow, and yeah, that one makes the list. So, in that way, they share the commonality. No gays, no exception. And upon further reading, further research about, because I wanted to know, well, what do they mean? Do they really hate me? Am I really an abomination? But, so I dug further, and what I found out was they really believe that you can meditate the gay away. And they mean it. Be of service, be celibate, and you just won't be gay anymore. Well, not true. I was married to a man for 11 years. I did the right thing and pretended to be heterosexual for a long time, and I was still gay the whole time. I was just lying. I was lying to everybody and myself. And I find that given that they have such a modern interpretation of the world we live in, that will be something the church may have to reevaluate. And I hope they do, because it isn't, it's not something we're making up. I find that with a religion that pulls so much, that puts so much value on education, science, technology, that we've just learned too much about human sexuality to just take a group of people and say, they're just deviant. Psychology has already decided that that's not exactly true. And, scientists studying homosexuality and the life of people who are homosexual have found that they can lead quite normal, quite happy lives, and can parent children and go on about their lives like everybody else. And I really, I find that my hope that this utopia they describe, by humanity coming in and unifying and being peaceful, will include gay people, because if it doesn't, it spells out a really harsh reality for those of us living as gays in the open now. I want to be included in world peace. I do. And I want to be educated and work to be a better person. And I think the foundations of the faith being that will, hopefully reevaluate those ideals. So who knows? Anyhow, thank you, sir. I hope you enjoyed my video. Have a good day.